So today we wanted to talk a little bit about all of life in a very real sense being Kriya Yoga, as Swamiji is saying. And one very interesting practical little tip that I have found extremely helpful is that when confronted in daily life with something unpleasant, which occasionally happens, I have found it very useful to do a Kriya breath. If I'm confronted with someone who is angry or being unpleasant in some way, instead of reacting or wanting to fight back or wanting to, assert myself or whatever it is, instead I go in and up and bring the Kriya breath to the point between the eyebrows. It works like magic. It works like magic. This Kriya Yoga technique is a technique of liberation. Why did Master say build communities? Why was he so keen on that concept of communities? Because he knew, and he said to us over and over, environment is stronger than willpower. We have to create a place. What would you like, Vijay? It's very echoey.
Is it not on?
Do you want me to just talk without a mic?
No.
Now, where was I? Let's see. Because Master knew that environment is stronger than willpower. Can you hear me? Yes. Well, keep smiling. Let me know that you're... If we can join together, see, the beauty of a community is that it's like an experience that we've had this weekend. We've had a miniature community experience. I was walking around yesterday during lunchtime, and it may have been because the food was so good, I'm not sure, but everyone was in bliss. Everyone, I don't know what the brain waves are called. I think they're the alpha waves, when everyone is just in that state of peacefulness and joy. That's what it was like everywhere. Everyone had that particular smile of bliss. That's a community experience. And why does that happen? Because everyone is thinking of God. Everyone is thinking of Kriya Yoga, thinking of living in joy, living in freedom. I had a sort of sobering conversation with Swamiji recently. I had remembered that either Swami or somewhere I had read years ago that the difference between an ordinary human being and an avatar is like the difference between a dog and a human being. That scared me. And so I said to Swamiji, is that true? Is that really what it is? And he said, no, not really. The difference between an ordinary human being and an avatar is more like the difference between a worm and a human being. Oh no, it's worse than I thought. We have a long way to go. And as someone was, maybe it was Dave or Diana yesterday, saying that there's so much infinite variety in our mistakes that we can make. Animals pretty much evolve gradually. They don't accrue a lot of karma, but once we hit the human level, there is no limit to how many mistakes we can make and how many detours we can take. There are infinite diversions. This Kali, Maya is just full of interesting sidetracks that we can go on everywhere. And being bounced back from a human being all the way to a germ and having to grope your way back up to the worm level. There is so much pain and suffering that we go through. We have to get out. And that's why all of us here, we know we will get out because we have this liberating technique of Kriya Yoga. As Master said, once you want to find God, it's very, very, very good karma. You're very close. We will find God. So why waste time? The beauty of community is that every satsang, every group meditation, every kirtan, every meal, every party, I often say when Kriya yogis want to have a good time, they meditate together. And if they want to really party, then they do some chanting first. But everything about living in community is to draw your energy upward, to pull that energy, like Master said, turning off the sense telephones, that all this diversion. Dharmadas has a very good line. He says that, if you watch movies, your mind becomes like scrambled eggs. And so many things in life just make your mind scrambled eggs. We want to draw our mind to a focus. We want to have our minds be like, remember whenever you took your beginning meditation class, your very first class, probably your teacher said, your mind is like a lake, and the moon is above the lake, but your thoughts are rippling the waters of the lake so that the reflection of the moon is in 1,000,000 shards of light. You can't tell what the moon looks like. Meditation calms the lake of your mind so that you can see the moon reflected clearly. That's our goal. We want to see the moon of God reflected clearly and purely in the lake of our minds. Why live any other way? Next year, let's try to have our Kriya Yoga retreat, our Mahasamadhi retreat, on our Pune land. Let's try for that. Let's give this gift of Master to Master, of a Kriya Yoga community in India. Nothing in this world happens without tapasya. And I was thinking yesterday, I was talking with some dear ones, and they were saying, how do I hold on to the bliss of meditation? And I recounted a story that is very meaningful to me. Many, many years ago, I was living in the Palo Alto community, and I was ill a lot of the time. And I said to Swamiji, I wish I had more energy so I could serve more, but I'm just so sick. And he said, be grateful for what you have, and God will give you more. And it's the same with bliss, that bliss of meditation. For us, we're just at the stage. It's just a growing phase in the evolution of our souls. We just have a touch of bliss, and then it goes away, and we're clamoring for it. That's part of God's trick. He wants us to have that bliss, that little taste, so that we'll try harder and keep going. But one of the most important things about hanging on to the bliss of meditation is to share it, to give it away. Give what you have. It's like love. If you want more love in your life, love more. If you want friendship in your life, be more of a friend to people. If you want more bliss, give that bliss away. Give it to everyone you meet. The little rickshaw driver, the little person at the checkout counter, at the grocery store. You don't have to, like Dhyana, teach everybody meditation at the airport, but she has that spark of bliss, and people want that. Be that channel for Master. Have every breath you take, every thought you think, every action be for him. Swamiji many years ago gave us this wonderful maxim. He said, in every question of your life, think, what would Master do? What would Master do? And Master himself said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. That's what we're trying to do. And we see that that's what Swamiji is doing. There is so little of him left. So little. He's swimming in the vibration of Master. He's swimming in that bliss. A friend of mine told me a very beautiful story that Swamiji very recently met with a group of, he's in his house in semi-seclusion in Italy, and occasionally he'll allow people to come over and talk about the book launch, for example, that's coming up in April, or this group of devotees came from another country, and so he wanted to greet them. Very briefly, he had them over to his house. Some of them he knew, some of them he didn't know. And as soon as they came into his living room, he said, I recognize each one of you from the oneness. Isn't that beautiful? That oneness of spirit is what he is identifying with. That's what his reality is, more and more. That's the beautiful blessing of being with Swamiji, is that we get to watch him as he goes into self-realization. We are his people. We're his devotees. That blessing is coming to us. And watching that transition from ordinary human being into realized soul, we get a ringside seat. But nothing comes without tapasya. I'm remembering, many of us, as we've been talking this weekend, many of us have been with Swami 35 years, 40 years. And I remember Swamiji saying, he basically built the community, paid for the community largely with his own hands. He traveled all over to many cities teaching yoga and meditation classes. He paid for that community with his blood, sweat, and tears. It was a tremendous tapasya for him. And he would tell us in later years, I used to pray to Divine Mother, why am I having to be so material? Why do I have to think about money? like our material success through Yoga Principles course. People sometimes look at that and say, material success? I'm not here for material success. I need spiritual blessings. Well, Swamiji found that by working, by putting out his energy, by making a superhuman effort to create something for God, the first Kriya Yoga community in America, he found that his greatest benefit was spiritual. So just as Dharmadas Ji was saying, okay, we have the land in Pune, now we start. Now is the start of the tapasya. Now we get to work and make this a reality so that tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people in India will benefit, will be able to come to our retreat and live this way, sort of as we all have been able to live this weekend, and to experience what it's like to have everyone of like mind moving the energy towards God. I'll just tell you one I find humorous story. I hope you do. Try to laugh anyway. Part of the tapasya for me, 35 years ago at Ananda, is that we didn't have any money. Many of us, I think most of us, like myself and Dharmadas Ji, had come from well-to-do families. We'd gone to college, but we were very young, and we had lived materialistic lives that were very full. I know my parents gave me anything that I wanted. I was, the only child. Being a daughter in America was a nice thing. They wanted a daughter. So I led a very privileged life. And the blessing of that was that I knew that didn't make me happy. India is just coming into materialism, just realizing the fun it is to have a big widescreen TV and a nice Mercedes-Benz and all the fun toys of materialism. Well, we all grew up, we had all that, and we knew it didn't make us happy. So we went searching, and we found Swamiji, we found Ananda, we found Master. And we had nothing. We were trying to pay for this huge piece of land, and the housing, here comes the funny story. The housing was, shall we say, rustic. And I have many housing stories. I lived in many different places, but my favorite was one that was right below Swamiji's house at Crystal Hermitage. It's all been bulldozed away now, fortunately, but it used to be where the monastery was, and the monks had built these various structures, and then they had moved on to a different place on the land. So I moved into one of these little structures. Well, the monk who had built it for $12. About 500 rupees. And by the time I moved in, it had depreciated in value. And he had built it just high enough that he could energize, and just wide enough that he could lie down, and just long enough that he could do Mahamudra and lie down in Savasana to do yoga postures. Well, that would have been perfectly fine. It's just that he was shorter than I was. And the bed was an old kitchen counter that was about this wide, that was stretched across the whole width. And I could never stretch out completely. And talk about back to nature. Every morning when I tried to get out of bed, first I had to look on the floor and make sure there were no big beetles on the floor, because there were always dozens and dozens of beetles on the floor. So I had to make sure I didn't hurt anything when I got out of bed. But you know, that was one of the most joyful times of my life. Vidura helped me put a wood stove in there. I remember, you probably don't even remember, but Jeannie, one of my dear friends, begged Vidura, please, you've got to at least get a wood stove in there. And it took up almost the whole room. But the joy of it was so great that now it's just a fun story to tell. It wasn't really tapasya, it was joy. The greatest happiness comes from serving something greater than yourself. If you're looking for personal fulfillment, you'll never be happy. It's one of the greatest secrets of the world. If you want to be happy, give of yourself. Give to something greater than yourself. We now have before us the need to raise crores and crores of rupees. Swamiji, as soon as he heard that we had this 20 acres, what was the first thing he said? Okay, we'll get 100 acres. We need at least 100 acres. So put your minds to that. Put your minds to serving Master. How can we create together this beautiful community? This community for God and the Masters, serving the blessing of Kriya Yoga. Give this Kriya Yoga to everyone. Be a channel for our Masters.